You are a disciple of the Kai Lords, learning their secret skills. But the monastery is attacked. Fortunately for you, you survive. Unfortunately for you, you are the only survivor. You are the lone wolf. Hello and welcome to the Friday Fantasy Show from the Bottled Imp, exploring the realms of fantasy. My name is Ken Boyter, and today we are taking a little look at, yes, this little bad boy. This is Lone Wolf, Book 1, Flight from the Dark. Now, this is written by Joe Dever, and the illustrations are by Gary Chalk. It's first published way back, ancient, 1984. And I was old enough to remember. But, strangely enough, these books, I don't seem to recall them. This is, it says here, a role-playing adventure. I remember the Fantasy Flight. No, not those ones. Yeah, the Fighting Fantasy. Hang on, I'm getting all my fantasies mixed up. Fighting Fantasy by Ian Livingstone and Steve Jackson. These ones passed me by, but over the years I have heard of these mythical beasts because at one point they did go out of print. Now this one seems to be a second edition, so I cracked it open. Could I survive? Lone Wolf Book 1, well I should say Game Book 1, because yes, this is one of those game books where you choose how the story unfolds. Now, as I say, I got into Warlock of Firetop Mountain, the Forest of Doom, and most recently, here at the Bottled Imp, we've been going back to those. And we have reviewed a few more of those. There was the Peril of, the Port of Peril? And also, there was a new book that they had written. Charlie Higson wrote one for that series, The Gates of Death. And I don't think we've done a review of that, but I have been playing it. I'm pretty sure I will be doing a review. So yeah, so I'm getting back into it. Plus also we did another book recently called The Sword of the Bastard Elf. And that is certainly an adult-only title. It's got adult themes in it. So I'm becoming more and more interested in these primarily single-player game books where, yeah, you choose your own adventure. Now, recently there's been that Bandersnatch, which has been on Netflix, which is a Charlie Brooker written episode or film, I guess you could call it, where you can now, I guess technology has really caught up, where you can now choose your own adventure. You choose how the actual TV show finishes. I haven't done it yet. I'm curious to see how it works, how many decisions you make. It could just be one ending at the end. But with these game books, because they're books and it's just easier to handle, you make multiple decisions throughout the book. With this book, I believe there's about 400 entries, so there's up to about 400 decisions to make. So there's two parts to the game book. Obviously there's the game and also the book. Now the book side of it, I will just quickly tell you a little bit about the story. Yes, you, Lone Wolf, that is the overall series title, and you are a disciple of the Kai monks, and you're learning their skills when a devastating attack by the Dark Lords on your monastery happens. Fortunately for you, you were out collecting firewood. Unfortunately for you, as I said previously, the monastery gets attacked. You are the sole survivor, and your name is, and I don't know if this has got lost over time, but it's actually Silent Wolf, which I quite like, because that contradicts who I normally am. Well, no, that's not true. I can talk a lot, but also I like peace and quiet. Anywho, that's the setup. I don't want to give too much more away. And, apart from you want revenge, that's what you're seeking. So the whole region is being attacked by these Dark Lords, and you are tasked with going to the capital city, which is various miles away. I don't think it states how many miles away it is. And you need to warn the king that this region is being attacked of his kingdom, and therefore calling upon reinforcements. So, that's quite a realistic sort of quest. You're not, if you're a sole person, you're not going to take on all these Dark Lords on yourself. You're going to kind of want to try and get help. And the only way to do that is by getting from your monastery to the capital. And consequently, there are going to be obstacles in your way, a lot of which are these Dark Lords or their creatures that help them. And you have to kind of try to evade as well. It's not all about trying to combat them and trying to fight them. Sometimes it's much better to try and evade or to go around them or to be camouflaged and sneak away. So it's not necessarily out and out combat fighting, although there is fighting in it. The story leads you a little bit more like, be a bit more cunning with this, be a bit more subtle. The game rules, yes. So like all these game books where you choose how the story unfolds, yes, you get to choose how the story unfolds. So from the story point of view, there will be choices, as in the most simple will be there's a door on the left and a door on the right. Which door do you want to go to? If you pick left, turn to entry 53, for example. If you pick the right, turn to entry 5, and then you will flip to those entries and you will then continue the story. But there are other rules as well. Now, my only reference points really are the fighting fantasy books and also this the Sword of the Bastard Elf. Now, that's an interesting combination because the fighting fantasy books were released around about roughly the same sort of time, maybe slightly earlier, maybe 2 years before these. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it was, anyway, it's certainly early 80s. So it came out roughly the same time. Whereas the Sword of the Bastard Elf came out 2018. So you've got a progression, and like anything that gets created, like video games, starts off with Frogger or Space Invaders, Pac-Man, and we end up now with Skyrim, and Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption, which are hugely evolved from the original kind of concept of what a video game was. So consequently, game books are going to evolve as well. So, first of all, you have your action chart, and that is where you keep track of pretty much everything, of your gold, of your weapons, of your equipment, of your special items, anything you put in your backpack, and also the combats that you encounter. You do also have combat skill and also endurance, and those are your kind of main attributes, if you like, that will determine how well you do throughout the game. If your endurance reaches 0 through loss of endurance, either through not eating, because every now and again you have to eat, or you just get bashed in the face and you get killed by an enemy, it gets down to 0 your endurance, you are dead and the game book is over. Combat skill is as what it sounds, it's how well you do when you do combat. Now, this is a slight difference. These are special abilities you get given. They are Kai disciplines, and they're the special abilities that you were learning because you were training to become a Kai Lord. And there are 10 to choose from, so you get a choice right at the beginning. And they include this, I'm not going to go through all 10, but there's camouflage, hunting, sixth sense, healing. There's other ones as well, some are to do with magic. So again, that's a really nice touch. I like that there's choices to be made about what special abilities. So you can tailor your character how you feel like you want to play it. They all have benefits throughout the book, and they will tell you when those special abilities kick in, when you can use them. Equipment, you start with an axe and you start with 1 meal. You also start with some gold coins, that's randomly determined. They call them gold crowns, I should say. So gold crowns, that's the currency within this world. You also find a map of Summerland, which is the region. Plus, there are 9 items that you randomly pick from. You only get 1, but there are 9 that you can randomly get. There are other rules. There's a list of various things, such as you can only carry 8 items in your backpack. And there's a big list of how you can carry your equipment, because there's various different ways. So for example, you can only wield 1 weapon ordinarily. You can wield 2 weapons, but you can't wield 3 weapons, things like that. You know what I'm talking about. And of course there are rules for combat. Now for me, this is the biggest change that I encountered, comparing to, as I say, I've only played 2 other types of these game books, so maybe I'm going to look into more. I've just backed a Kickstarter project by the author Jonathan Green called Beowulf, and it'd be interesting to see how he does his sort of combat system, or how he does other special abilities, or however he sets up his game books, because there is certainly scope for different things going on, different kind of ways to create these game books. But anyway, the rules for combat in Lone Wolf are as follows. There is on the back of the book there, or in the back of the book, there's a random number table. And this is 0 to 9, and they're all just little squares with the 0 to 9 number in them, and they're all random. And then what you do is you get a pencil or your finger or something, and you just close your eyes, and then you go, doop. And then you look at it and go, oh, number 5. Doop. Oh, look at that, it was number 0. Oh, look at that, doop. It was number 2. Is 0 a number? I could hear people saying 0's not a number. Okay, I don't know if it is or not. But anyway, that's what you do. That's how you do it. So you don't need to have any die or dice to roll. So the way you set it up at the beginning is you will do the random number thingy. And so if you've got 5, for combat skill you will add 10 to that. So you would get a total of 15. Plus, then you do your endurance, then you will just do the same, so you do the same, acting it out. So say you get a 9, woohoo! With endurance you add 20 to it, so I would have 29. And you write them in onto the sheet. Now I recommend that you photocopy these sheets, or you draw them out, but you can photocopy them, and therefore you won't spoil your book. Combat. Now combat, at first, when I read the rules, I thought, oh, hang on, this is going to be complicated, because in the Fighting Fantasy ones and in the Sword of the Bastard Elf, you simply roll dice to determine combat. Seems fairly straightforward. With this one, what you do is you subtract the combat skill of your enemy from your total combat skill, and that's including any bonuses that you might get from weapons or anything like that. And then you determine the combat ratio. So when you minus the enemy's combat skill from your combat skill, that's called a combat ratio. Now it could go into minuses, so it might be -2, 3, 4, whatever. But it could be 0 as well, and it also could be plus, it could be positive numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., etc. Then what you do is there is a combat results table, and then you look at the ratio. So say it was -3, you look at -3. Then what you do is you will get the table again, and you will, the random number generator, and you will just randomly pick a number. So say it was 5, so you would go, right, so say your combat ratio was -3, you look at that column, and then down the side, say I picked 5, you go down 5, and then that will determine how many endurance points you lose and how many endurance points the enemy loses. And they will differ, and they will differ each round. So there's a slightly different way of taking hits. It's not just you -2 points off every single round for every combat. It can fluctuate. So sometimes if you get a good number, you could damage the enemy 9 endurance points, and you would get 0, or you could damage it 3 and I could get damage 5, just depending on how all of that works out. Overall, I did enjoy it. It's good. There's various, as I say, there's 2 sides to playing a game book. There's the story, and that kind of what lures you in. Plus also there's the game part of it. So the story part of it, I find it interesting, because you get more of a character of who you are. Although I do like the Fighting Fantasy where you're basically quite vague, because then you could feel out who you are in your own mind. So there's pros and cons to both sides of this. This one is very determined. You've got a name, you've got a profession, if you like. You're training to be a Kai Lord, and you have these special abilities. So there are certain parts of this story that's more defined. And the story itself, it's a good setup. You're being under attack, so immediately you get thrown into the action. You have to go and seek revenge, so you have to go and scurry away and try not to get attacked, really, primarily. The entries are quite short. There's not a lot of description in each entry, so I don't know how I feel about that. On the one hand, it's good because they're snappy and you kind of whip through it quite quickly in that respect, and it does feel like, especially in the early part, you're running because you're trying to get from one place to the next, and so it builds up very quick. So it does feel like you're on the move a lot, which I guess is the feeling that they wanted. But then saying that, maybe I wanted some of them, and there were a few that were longer, and maybe with the long ones you get slightly more engaged with the book, because then at least you feel like you're learning a little bit more about the world. And I think maybe if I was going to be really hard pushed, I think I wanted the entries to be slightly longer. That could just because I'm an adult. If you're reading this as a kid, it's probably perfectly pitched, because then, you can, I don't know, maybe I'm doing kids a disservice, but their attention spans, you might want things a little bit more zappy. Plus also, I guess it's interesting, this was printed in 84. Video games have come a long way. Maybe it's good that they're shorter, because maybe now the attention spans of everybody is a lot shorter. Who knows? But for me, I kind of maybe wanted them to be slightly longer. The writing is very engaging. It's very proficient in writing. It's good quality. So yeah, in terms of the story, it certainly did hook me in. The game part of it, I really loved the disciplines. I loved all the special abilities. I loved all that. It was a really nice touch. And, you know, they did come into a play. It wasn't like you just pick them and you never use them. They do come into play, and it's really nice. We go, oh, yeah, I picked that. And you feel a little smug. I like the random object selection at the beginning, so you're not quite sure what you're going to get. I like that because, you know, because you're foraging, you find it, so that's good. So it's part of the theme as well. And I like the 8-item limit because that's a bit more realistic. The random generating, I quite liked, and I quite like the combat system, but for me, I don't know. I think I do prefer rolling dice. There's just something about rolling dice to determine outcomes in battles and determining randomness. There's just something about it because you roll it, it's all exciting, you feel more part of it, and boom, it's a noise that happens, you know. It feels a little bit more exciting. But I can kind of understand why they do it this way, because if you haven't got dice, you know, then you don't need dice. You can just play the game without dice. But I guess nowadays dice are very prevalent. Even the, you know, the D&D dice, the D10s and the D8s, you know, things have moved on. And this is what I mean by evolution of game books. So it might, I think I prefer the dice, but still, the system does work. Sometimes you might think that the battles are slightly easy. Sometimes you might think they're a bit hard. But, you know, in terms of the system, it does actually work. The illustrations, just want to quickly mention the illustrations. I love the pictures, the line drawings. They're beautifully drawn by Gary Chalk. He was very much, you know, I believed he did a lot of Talisman stuff as well, which is fantastic. He did books 1 to 8 of this series. There's 29 books in the series. It's beautifully detailed, all the line work, realistic, full of atmosphere. So I would recommend this, especially if you're kind of looking back on a nostalgia point of view. Lone Wolf is beautiful. Really, really, I'd give it a go. It's certainly going to capture your imagination. Plus, the other added thing with these is they're intended to be played and you level up your character. So you take your character from one book to the next. So there we are. Lone Wolf, thoroughly recommended. There we are, Lone Wolf. Now, as you can see, this isn't the book. No, I ordered this, and I got this through the post as well with the book. It is a little bookmark, nicely done by Darren. So I just want to give Darren a little bit of a plug. If you're interested in game books, he seems like he specialises in buying and selling game books. So go to dazfilling@hotmail.com. That's DAZFILLING at hotcom. That's something completely different. Hotmail.com. Nice little bookmark. Love it. So there we are, Lone Wolf. There's been video games of this. It is a big kind of deal. These sort of sold over 10 million books worldwide. And Julian and I, when we went to film the UK Games Expo a couple of years ago, we had the pleasure of meeting and interviewing Joe Diva. Such a lovely man. So it's a real pleasure to finally crack into these books. Check these out. As I say, we have done other game book reviews. Check those out as well. And we've done lots of other things. We also have a Twitter account. We've got a Facebook account. Oh, we're everywhere. Remember to spread the word of the imp. Unless you keep it real. No, don't keep it real. Keep it unreal. And then spread the word of the imp. I'm just wittering.